Hello everyone and welcome back. Today we're going to be doing something very different, as I can now confirm I have played Dawn of War 4. I was invited to a digital event where I was able to play one of the missions for the game, and I can now talk to you about my experiences, my thoughts, and basically my first impressions so far. This video itself is sponsored by PlayOn, who are the lovely people who reached out and asked me if I wanted to play the game. Now, before anything, I do want to state that this is a very early build of the game, so in terms of balancing and so on, while it feels pretty damn good right now, I am not going to be jumping too much into that for this video. I feel like that's quite important, as when we get closer is when we can start looking towards balance, I think. So in this video, I'm going to have timestamps below, basically just talking about all the features that I got to play around with, some stuff that I did note. There is a lot. So I do imagine that this is going to be a long video. And what you'll be seeing on screen is B-roll footage kindly supplied by the devs. This is the usual stuff that you can kind of expect when a game is still in very early builds, or they just don't want to show anything just yet. Anything in specific that could break during a recording session. Alright, so first things first, the game menu. So there's a campaign menu, as you can imagine, of which there are 4 confirmed campaigns. We'll be talking about those a little bit later on. You can play them in any order apparently, but there is a specific order for the story. There is a skirmish mode, last stand, multiplayer, and finally, yes, I can confirm that I see that there is an army paint. I've not been able to try it out, which breaks my heart, but hey, you know, this game is going to come out eventually and I'll be able to play around to my heart's content. Alright, so I managed to play one battle, which was one mission, a scripted battle where I'm playing as the Blood Ravens versus the Orcs. There are some guardsmen there who act like a very side-based ally here. The Orcs themselves control most of the map, and they're led by Gorguts. You need to build up a base. They'll try to build up some Gorkanauts, which is pretty cool, and you have a timer to stop that. Near the end, some Necrons spawn in, the AdMech also spawn in. It's kind of cool just to see everyone in there doing their battles, which, by the way, the Necrons, oh my god, they do some big damage there. I'm not sure what entirely went on. I think it was probably the monolith being exploded, but most of my forces, which I did have quite a lot of assault intercessors, well, yeah, they kind of melted. So 2 returning characters have been confirmed so far. Cyrus is back with Phobos armor as he's crossed the Rubicon Primaris. He's still a sniper, so don't worry about that. His core play is going to be very similar to what you're already used to. Gorguts is back. I wasn't able to play with him. He's the leader of one of 2 orc tribes in the game, apparently. And yeah, I mean, he does quite a bit of damage, honestly. I mean, it's Gorguts, right? What else am I going to say? He's there to war and hit you hard. So there's 4 confirmed playable factions, each with their own campaign. We know that the Space Marines are there, the Orcs, the Necrons, and now new here are the AdMech. They're all guard in the game, but they don't seem to be confirmed as playable. Assuming that things go well with this game, maybe it could end up as DLC, as we had something similar in this with Winter Assault. Originally with Dawn of War 1, there were guardsmen, and then they became their own DLC in the future. This is me just wishful thinking, not anything that the devs have told me. It'd be great though, as well, I mean, I think a lot of us have just been foaming at the mouth for more Dawn of War, so the more Dawn of War we get, the better. Okay, gameplay-wise. So, this is a traditional Dawn of War game. In fact, this plays more like Dawn of War 1 than anything else, right? There's base building, there's requisition and power resources, and there's a unit cap, which mine was 300 for this battle specifically. You can zoom into the battles very closely, as close as you can with, say, Total War games. So you can get very close. This is for the purpose of the battle, or maybe you're like me and you like seeing unit detail, because games like this help me when I'm painting up some models. This is a great reference point. The map I played itself was fairly large, not sure if all the maps are the same size, but imagine that they'll depend on player size as expected. This map itself was for 3 players, 2v1, which was good to see. It's nice to see that we're going to get some maps that aren't just going to be 1v1 or 2v2 or 3v3, you know. There's a lot of games nowadays that just do balanced styling map rather than, you know, cool factor. The map itself kind of reminded me of a stronghold battle. It wasn't a stronghold battle, keep that in mind, but in terms of the layout, it just felt great. There were multiple ways to attack to. There were a decent amount of choke points. There was a lot of areas where you could get some pretty decent cover too. Yeah, this was great. It felt awesome. Now, Units can retreat, attack, move, and you've also got a new system where you can just you can mouse over a full area where you want these units to attack, and they'll go there and attack that area. It felt pretty damn good. Unit grouping is possible, which is good if you like to micro. I didn't see too much need to micro here, barring just having 2 groups. But they were mostly full of heavy hitters. Units do have upkeep, so keep that in mind, right? So I know it's going to be one of these things that are going to catch people off guard, but it's pretty decent and it makes a lot of sense. You're not going to be breaking the bank unless you're doom stacking, but in a game like this, you're going to think that upkeep makes a lot of sense. You're going to want different units. Not sure about the other factions. I've only been able to play the Space Marines, but I was able to have a decent amount of troops on the table and still have upkeep to carry on building up my base, to keep launching towers into the middle of the combat, which felt really damn good, not gonna lie. Space Marines don't have builders, by the way. It's more like you requisition the buildings, they come in via drop pod. There's a lot of drop pods for the Space Marines. Orcs do have builders, though. Well, they're not even builders. When it comes to the Orcs, most of the units are able to build up, which is fantastic. It shows that it's very orky, right? I think this is kind of important. It shows that there's going to be a lot of distinction between all the different playable factions, and it makes sense. Like, you've got different types of rosters, you should have different types of build style too. So I'm going to be talking about the Space Marine roster here. Keep in mind that this is an alpha build, so stuff can change. This is usual when a game is being developed. So there's the Infiltrators, there's the Intercessors, Assault Intercessors, Eliminators, Invicta Warsuits, Blade Guard Veterans, Eradicators, Terminators, Redemptor Dreadnoughts, Outriders, Gladiators, and Repulsors. There's quite a lot. Obviously, it's going to be focusing very heavily on Primaris troopers here. Units are unlocked themselves by building specific buildings, getting research for certain troops. Units can be upgraded with different war gear. For example, with your normal Intercessor squads, you can get them with auto bolters or stalk bolters too. This is great because, again, you've got that weapon choice. But you also get smaller stuff like upgrading a unit within the squad to have like a power sword and so on. This is great. Again, you can tailor your forces to how you like to play. You're going to be playing as the Blood Ravens, but maybe your playstyle is more similar to that of the Imperial Fists or whatever. You've got a lot of flexibility here. Upgrades do cost resources, so keep that in mind. You won't be jumping straight into that because you're going to be wanting a few troops there. All the troops feel great. They've all got their fun animations there. I've been able to just like stare at them, do a little bit of fighting, and yeah, it feels like a Dawn of War game. I keep jumping back into that, but I think a lot of us were kind of worried. Stratagems have found their way into the game. Again, I've only been able to do Space Marine ones, but you gain them pretty naturally. Just play through the battle, and then you can use them. They do have their cooldowns, by the way. So here are the 3 different types, right? There's Orbital Bombardment. Drop a huge explosion around a small area. Really powerful when I used it, to be honest. I think it could take out a Gorkanaut. I do have to stress out that this Gorkanaut was being constructed, so I don't know if it would have done as much damage to one that was already built up. Thunderhawk cluster bombs, as you can imagine, pretty good damage while dealing with hordes, so loads of greenskins, very, very good here. And then finally, Battle Honors, which gives units in an area experience, because obviously veterancy is stuff that you can expect in Dawn of War 4. Alright, let's talk about base building. So again, I've only played the Space Marine one, so I can't really talk about anything else. There's no builders, everything's sent in via drop pod, giving you more control of the map in all honesty. So one thing that's going to be different from Dawn of War 1 is you can't have multiple buildings just kind of speed up a building, but you can drop them in areas that you've revealed if you want to build a forward base, or you've got new buildings that you want to get sorted over there. You do get the benefit of being closer to your Fortress Monastery because obviously your troopers will recruit faster and so on, and they're fairly expensive to build, so I wouldn't say it's a good idea to build multiple ones. But for example, with this map that I played, there were a number of choke points. 2 of them I would consider major, where I was able to hold down there, build up a base there, and just wait. It was one of those games where I was able to get a lot of defenses up, keep the enemy at bay, and then just spam out the really, really cool units. Yes, even with the upkeep, I had a lot of Dreadnoughts up and running. I love Dreadnoughts. This does mean that you should be able to get a little bit more support for your friends if you want to build up one of the barracks in one location, just so you can get some Space Marine Intercessors supporting over there. If you're playing a battle where you see that your friends might need to wait a little bit to get themselves up and running. Like I said, when it comes to the greenskins, Orcs don't have builders also, but it's more because most of their normal troops can build, right? I have no other information about the other playable factions, but it can be assumed that they've got their own ways for that. I'm pretty keen on this. I've said this earlier in the video, but it's really nice to have a different playstyle altogether. When it comes to a lot of RTS games like Age of Empires and so on, which is an older format obviously, everyone's going to have very similar styles of play. This is making it very, very different, but still very much on theme with your chosen faction. Okay, we're going to jump into the Orc roster now, and now keep in mind, I might have missed a unit, because there was a lot going on, and I was kind of busy, you know, fighting. So, there's Gretchen, there's Shooter Boys, there's Slugger Boys, Storm Boys, Flash Kits, Beast Snagger Boys, Squig Hog Boys, Mega Knobs, Bomb Squig Hordes, Death Dreads, Gun Wagons, and Gorkanauts. There's quite a lot, honestly. There was a lot of Orcs on the field, especially as I got closer and closer to their main camp, because at some point they just came with a large force, and I wasn't defending that area. I had played the map a few times, but I completely forgot about a massive horde of greenskins charging at me. It was pretty cool. It was honestly really, really cool. For the Necron units, there wasn't really a lot, but keep in mind that this was just like a strike force, so there was Lich Guard, Warriors, Canoptech Doomstalkers, and a Monolith, and they were pretty damn tasty. Alongside that, there was the AdMech, which had some Skitarii Rangers, some Cataphon Breachers, and a Knight Castellan, which, oh my god, was absolutely beautiful. Made me want to paint up the one that I've had there for a while. And I might, honestly. It was just so cool to see that. Alright, so I want to give some thoughts around the game. I mean, I've been doing that for the whole video, but I want to talk about like my general experience. Yeah, this feels like Dawn of War 1. What is nice, though, it does feel like they got some quality of life stuff from Dawn of War 2, the better forms of cover, for example. It just feels a lot better there. Line of sight feels great, combat feels amazing. You can tell what the devs wanted to do was, let's look at Dawn of War 1 and let's see how it would take in a modern way, which I think is really, really important. They're not reinventing the wheel. It's not Dawn of War 3, which is really, really important. Choke points feel great. You do get like a proper kill zone there, especially if you start dropping a bunch of towers in. Again, I can only talk about my experience with the Space Marines, but it felt very much like playing the Space Marines. This is the stuff that you hear about in lore videos, what you read about in books, what you kind of visualize when you're playing the tabletop. The roster feels great. It's large enough to have a lot of different troops, and the fact that you get upgrades there so you can switch out weapons, that feels fantastic. Honestly, I am really surprised, I'm not gonna lie. I did come in with my defenses a bit up, thinking, oh my god, no, another Dawn of War game. I was just kind of scared because we had 3 different types. You know, we had the traditional RTS with 1, then we had the real-time tactics with 2, and then we had like that MOBA with 3. All that was needed was like a dating simulator with 4. But yeah, no, we got what we wanted. We're getting a Dawn of War 1 style combat, which, again, loads of units on the field, you can get a fair amount of troops, they all have their different uses, and even more so when you switch out the weapons and so on, you actually are fielding a full company of troops. I honestly just can't wait to see how the Necrons, Orcs, and AdMech play. I'm just so excited. The prospect of this has a potential to be a very big title. I don't want to talk about that too soon because obviously it is quite early into everything. This game is getting released next year and we don't know exactly when, but maybe, you never know, man. I'd love to see DLCs. I'd like to see them carrying on the format that Dawn of War 1 brought in. So its own Winter Assault, its own Dark Crusade, which funny enough, we are on the planet for Dark Crusade. DLCs to introduce brand new factions, some new campaigns. There's a lot of potential for this title to be great. Obviously, that can't be judged until it gets closer to the release build, but what I've played so far had me hooked. I was supposed to play the mission maybe 1 or 2 times just to kind of get my bearings and then write this video. That was my plan. I ended up playing it a number of times. I ended up just like restarting, just kind of getting in there just to check out the units. It was awesome. It was what we've needed from a 40k game. Obviously, we've had some big titles lately. We've had Space Marine 2, we've had Rogue Trader. That's all stuff that everyone's been asking for. But everyone's also been asking for an RTS. And I don't think it gets any bigger than a Dawn of War. I imagine news drops on this title will be dropping every now and then, so hopefully it won't be too long until we start covering this on the channel again. I'm going to keep an eye out because I have high hopes for this from what I've played so far, and hopefully it won't be too long until we get to see the Orcs. Necrons, I think Necrons are going to be the ones that I am going to be most curious about, because I loved the Necrons in Dawn of War 1, so I'd love to see how it's going to be different, or maybe the same with a few changes. Once again, a big thank you to Play On for not only sponsoring this video, but for the opportunity to play this game. It's such a shock. And let me know what you guys think in the comments below. Let's start a bit of a discussion. I'll see you all again very, very soon. Have a good day.